Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the Design Experiences series with UiPath, where we are exploring the classic and the modern experiences. In the previous videos of the series, we have seen that how you can differentiate between classic versus modern, what are the activities, what are the project behavior, what is the studio behavior, and all of that, right? We have also seen what are the targeting methods and approaches which are available whenever we do UI automation. In case you are not comfortable with any of this, I would recommend you to watch this playlist from the first video. That will give you the background of today's video. In the last video of the playlist, we are looking at an activity which is called use application / browser. And that is the first activity we should use whenever we are doing the modern experience. In the previous video, we have seen that what exactly is this activity and how does it differentiate when you work on application versus when you work on browser. Today in this video we are going to see what are the different properties which are available for this activity. So this activity is single, but it has a lot of properties which as a developer we should know that what checking, unchecking, selecting this value, deselecting this value impact the automation. And all those properties of use application / browser we are going to cover in this video. Before getting started, if you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next upcoming videos. So let's get started. If you go to UiPath Studio and you click on the properties, you have these many properties which are available. If I go here, properties, see these many properties. So as a developer, you should know which property works in what way, when to use what, when not to use what, right? Most of this you would be familiar, you would see similarity to the classic, but some of them are entirely new, right? So we'll try to cover all of them in this video, right? That's the agenda. Fine. So the top three properties are the common, continue on error, display name, and timeout, right? Continue on error. As the name suggests, do you want to continue the automation if you get some error? The default value is false, right? The default value is false. If I go here, you see default value is false. If I set it to true, which means that even if this automation encounters some error or exception, this exception will not be thrown. If it is false, right, continue on error is equal to false, that it won't continue if it is error, right? The next thing is the display name, which is nothing but this guy, right? You can change it from here, untitled notepad demo, and it will change here also, or you can also go and change it here. It should reflect back, right? So that is the second property, which is called the display name. Okay. The third property is timeout, right? Remember guys, timeout, how much time the automation should look for the notepad, right? If you see here, as of now, the notepad is not available on the screen, right? If I go here and I say run the file, this will open the notepad. But what happens if the notepad is not installed on my computer? Should it look for the lifetime? The answer is no. How much time should it look, right? So that timeout is controlled here. Timeout. The default value of this thing is 30 seconds. You can always has an option to increase or decrease this, right? The default value is 30 seconds, right? Now a difference here guys. In the classic activities, to specify 30, I used to write 30,000 because that was in milliseconds. But here in this activity, this is in seconds, right? So if I use this one, that means 30,000 seconds, right? If I want to use 30 seconds, just write 30, right? So that is the difference between the classic and the modern experience, right? So if you hover the timeout, it's mentioned here, right? in seconds, right? In the classic one, it was in the milliseconds, right? So those of you who actually forgot, let me quickly show it to you. This was the classic click. If I go to the properties, see the timeout, right? It should be in the target. Here, timeout is in milliseconds, right? But in the modern, it is in seconds. Okay, so please remember that thing whenever you are doing the automation, otherwise your automation would stay for a long. Okay, so continue on error is clear, display name is clear, right? Now there are some things which I want to mention here. Whenever you are doing the automation, the display name is automatically created by UiPath as soon as you click on here, right? Unless you manually set it, that is fine, you can always manually change it, right? But when UiPath does it, if it is an application, you would see the use application. If it is a browser, you would see use browser. UiPath will automatically put the browser type. If it is an application, it will put the title and the application name. For browser, it will automatically put the browser type and the title. You always has an option to change it, but if you don't change it, you can just identify by looking at the display name that what this activity does, right? Now, in case of nested application, in case you have one use browser activity nested inside the other, each activity will have a drop down which enable you to choose the application card you want to use with, right? So this nesting we would see in some other video, but important to remember, you can always differentiate with the help of the name as well, right? Again, the last one was timeout. The same thing which I was showing, the default value is 30 seconds, right? When indicating a window in remote desktop, the default setting is set to 60 seconds, right? Please remember this. The default value is 30 seconds when you are doing the automation in the normal environment, as I was showing in the notepad. But if you do it in the remote, the default setting changed to 60 seconds, which is 60, right? So that is also one of the difference with this activity. Okay, so let me quickly show you the display part. See, use application, use browser, Edge, and I am trying to open Google, right? Auto generated makes sense, but you can change it, right? So these are the first three properties which are in the common. Okay, if you scroll down, this was the common. I collapse the common. In the input, you have all these options: arguments, file, path, selector, URL. What exactly are those? Let me quickly go back here and let's see that, right? Unified target application. Now, in the unified target application, you have something which is mentioned here, which is target app. See, I'll show you here, target app. What exactly that thing is? If the application is not a web browser, which means that it is a normal application, you can specify it to pass the target application on the startup. You can use this property to specify file with an application. Let me give an example. If the target is an Adobe reader, which is a Acrobat reader, and I want to open a specific workbook like C sample PDF, I can simply use that in this one, right? Sounds confusing? Let me go back to UiPath and show it to you, right? So in nutshell, whenever I am using any application, be it this or the browser, this would be the target app, and these options would be applicable as per the type of selection. So if I have selected a unified target application here and I am giving the file path, which means that I want to open system32.notepad, and this is the selector and the URL is blank. But if I go to the browser, you would notice this is target app, selector is also there, but URL is also there and file path is missing. So basically the idea is simple. If you want to do an automation on any application, you would have file path, and if you want to do on the browser, you would have a URL. That makes sense. But what happens if I simply try to put URL on the notepad? Let's try to see that. See here in the notepad, I'll go to the properties, the URL is blank, paste it here. file path is required, right? It's saying that at a time you can only put file path or only you can put this, right? And that makes sense, right? At a time, in a single, you cannot have both of them. So target app would decide what kind of app you have, right? If you put URL, this would be a browser. If you put file path, this would be a application. And argument is again the same thing which we discussed at the beginning, right? Selector, I hope you guys now understand what exactly is selector. If you still are not sure what exactly is selector, we have a dedicated video in the first video and a dedicated playlist on selector. Please do refer that. I'll put the link in the description, right? Selector is the unique identifier, that how do you identify the elements on the screen, right? Now the last thing is the URL here, right? If you put the file path, you cannot put the URL. If you put the URL, you cannot put the file path, right? But selector would be common, right? Now, one thing here which I want to show you, if I have to point it to a new application, I just go here, indicate on screen and point it to a new application. But what if I want to clear this activity? You just go here and say null, and that would clear out everything, right? Because when I say indicate on screen, I have to point it to a new activity, right? But what if I want to clear everything? I just go here and I changed it. And if I select target app again, now I just have to point it, and I can point it to anywhere, right? Let's say this PowerPoint, right? So that's why you have this option here, which is called the null as well, to clear out this activity. I hope that makes sense. And let's move forward now. Okay. The next property is input element, output element, and the miscellaneous, right? Now, input element, the target of the element you want to use with this application stored in the UI element object. Very confusing, right? You would be like, Mukesh, what did you say? The second thing is the output element. Whatever you store, you can retrieve that also. But now you might be thinking, how can I utilize? What is this? Can you explain with the example? I am going to do that, right? But just read this theory first. When I say input element, as the name suggests, input element, whatever element you want to get as an input, you can use it here. Output element, whatever element you want to give as output, you can use it as output element. What does that actually mean, right? So, for example, I'll just delete this browser from here. Okay. I have opened a PowerPoint slide here, right? Use application / browser is already opening a browser here. I want to use this same instance of this PowerPoint into a new activity. Okay. Let me take a new activity here. Use application / browser, right? Absolutely blank. Do not have anything asking me to point to an application. Now one option is to always indicate and point it to this same PowerPoint slide. The other option is pass the element from here to here. So that means that for this activity it would be input, and for the first activity it would be output. So for the first activity, I'll go to the properties. In the output element, I'll hit Ctrl+K and I'll say element, and this would be a variable of type UI element. Okay, element variable created. How can I check that? Go to data manager, element variable created. Now for the second one, showing an error, if I go to the properties and input element would now be that element. Job done, right? Input application is element, right? So basically I can pass the UI element from one activity to the other activity, which simply means the input and the output, right? Input and the output. Wherever you want to take input, you will say input element. Wherever you want to give, you say output element. Okay, and the last one is the miscellaneous, which is called the private. If selected, the values of the variable and the arguments are no longer logged at the WebROS level, right? So orchestrator has different set of logs. In case you don't want the value of variables and arguments to be logged, you simply tick this option and this value would not be logged. Okay, so I hope these properties are clear. How do you use input and how do you use the output? Okay, the next option, right? In the same, you have something which is called open, and this has never, if not open, and always. And in the close, you have these three options, right? Where exactly that thing is, let me show in the app. So if you go here in the properties, in the here you see in the options you have the open and you have the close. In the open you have three options, and in the close also you have the three options. Now what does it mean? If in the open you say never, if not open, and always. If I select it to never, which would say that never open the application. By default, this activity is automatically opening the application for us. I do not want this to happen. How do I control it? I just say never open the application and let it fail, right? You might have a requirement where you don't want to open the application again, right? Remember, this activity was automatically opening it. The second option is if not open. Open only if the application is closed. This is the default value, right? Works only if the file path or the URL are populated, right? That makes sense. If it is not already open, then only this application would, then only this activity would open it. But if you select it to always, right, irrespective whether the another instance is open, if it is not open, it will always open a new instance, right? So depending on a requirement, guys, you need to decide how do you open your applications, right? So pretty simple, right? This activity was already opening. If you don't want to open, just select never, run the automation, and it would not open. If it is not open, this is the default settings. The default option is if not open. You need to remember this also, and always will always open, right? As the name suggests. I hope you guys are understanding and following along. What I request you guys is to go back and practice these three options. That would make this very clear to you. Now, where exactly this setting is available? Let me quickly go back to the UiPath Studio. And if you see here in the options, open, here you have all the three settings which we have been talking about and which we can use as per our requirement. Okay. Now, same like open, you have an option which is called close. So close also have got three options now. Never, if opened by the app browser, or always. As the name suggests, never close the application. If you don't want the application to close, just use this. If opened by the app browser. Let's say you are writing an automation where you want to close the browser or the application. Only if it is opened by that activity, you use this one. And always means always close the application. This is the default value, right? In the open, the default value is if not open. Here the default value is if opened by the app browser. So if you leave this to blank, this is the default settings, right? Moving ahead, we have one more thing which is called input mode, right? So the people who are having an experience in the classic activities, right? We used to have simulate type, simulate click, send window messages, right? How does that happen here? All those settings are applicable to here in this option which is called the input mode. All these options are available here, right? Hardware events is the slowest method. It cannot work in the background but is compatible with the desktop app. In the simulate, this simulate with the help of API. Then we have something which is called Chromium API. This works on the debugger API, works only on the Chromium elements, right? Send window messages and the background, right? All of these options are available and here are the properties, right? Now, we have a dedicated video where we are explaining what is the difference between the default, send window messages, simulate click, what is the compatibility, background execution, speed, hotkey and empty field, right? So the people who already have experience in this thing, this exactly is the same thing which is available here. But what you guys need to remember is that the name are a little bit changed, right? Here, if I select background, it would mean that run the action in the background. it tries to use the simulate or the Chromium API when possible. So what would I request you guys is to pause this video and read all these options at least once, right? Just read what does simulate do, what does Chromium API do, Windows messages and background. And even better would be just create a single automation, I would say simple automation, and try to change the settings and see the behavior. Okay, but the idea is whatever we have in the classic experience, compatibility methods, capability method defaults and window, same are available here. In case you want to know more, I have this dedicated video where I'm explaining all of this. The link to this video is available in the description. Okay, and this option is available here in the options input mode, hardware event, simulates, Chromium API, window messages and background. What each of them does, just refer to this slide. Okay, now in the property section also there is one more option which is called Resize Window, right? As the name suggests, do you want to resize the window or you don't want to resize the window, right? It has some default settings and which are self-explanatory, but again I'll quickly tell you so that you guys remember that yes, I have this setting also, right? Minimize, maximize, as the name suggests, do you want it to minimize when it is initialized or do you want to maximize? If I set it to none, that means that no resize is applied to the application or the browser. While automating, right, first time when you opened the notepad, it was very small window. So if you select this option, restore to the current size, when it is doing the automation, UiPath will try to put that notepad in the same size. If you select it to none, then nothing happens. Maximize, it will maximize. Minimize, it will minimize. It will open the application in the minimize mode, right? And all this setting is available here, which is called the Resize Window. If you see here, we have one more option which is called window attach mode, which is called application instance and single window. There are two options here. Now this defines where inner activities search for the target element. If I have some use activity, let's say click, or I have say find element. Now if you want the inner activity to search only in one window, only in that particular window, so I say single window. But if I want it to search in all the child activities, inner activities, I would use the application instance, right? So window attach mode has two options. One is the application instance and the other is a single window, right? Inner activity search only in the indicated window, and application instance, inner activity search the indicated application instance, including all the parents and the child workflows, including the alerts and the pop-ups. Other instances of the applications are excluded, right? This option is also available for you in the Windows attach mode. And both of them are available here, right? See, resize window, do you want to resize, minimize, maximize, restore to this time, none, maximize is available here, and Windows attach mode is available here, right? Application window, single window, depending on your requirement, right? One other thing which I just want to show, right? Whenever you want any more information, you can just keep your mouse on these settings and UiPath will show you what exactly this thing means, right? Now we have covered all of these settings. The last option is applicable only to the browser, right? Because this activity works with use application and it also works with the browser, right? So these settings, the last section is applicable only to the browser, incognito or the private, right? As the name suggests, if I want to open a browser in an incognito or private mode, here is the settings, guys, incognito / private mode. User data folder mode. In your browser settings, you have something which is called user data folder mode. It has three options: automatic, default folder, or the custom folder, right? Now what does it mean? The user data folder mode you want to set, right? Whenever we use the browser, right, it takes some information with the user data folder. If it is my computer, it would be local app data slash UiPath something, right? So every browser has something which is called the specific user data folder. Now this property let you to customize how do you want to use the user data folder. If you set it to automatic, which means that picture in picture mode uses a different folder other than the default mode, automatically generated if user data folder is not present. Default folder, use the default browser folder no matter if it runs on the main or the picture in picture session. Custom folder uses the folder specified in the user data folder path or auto generated if the path is not set. Now what does this mean? The last one. If you go back to the activity, you would see here this was the incognito. User data folder mode. Do you want it to automatic? Do you want the default folder, or do you want the custom folder? As soon as I select the custom folder, which means that I am telling UiPath to use this folder. So that means that now you would have to provide the folder path here. Okay. Now what happens if I do not provide that folder path? If I don't provide that folder path, it is by default to this location. Okay. Then the last setting here, guys, is the web driver mode. Indicates how the web driver is used when opening the new browser session. So when I have used the open browser, how does it behave? Is it disabled, the use of web driver with the graphical user interface, or the headless, right? The headless would launch the browser silently with no graphical user interface, right? Now a question arises, I am not an expert, but I want to know more about this, right? But by just reading, I'm not able to understand, right? How can I know more? So all you have to do is go back to UiPath Studio, right click on this activity, click on help, right? This I have shown in the previous videos also. It will directly take you to docs.uipath.com, right? And all of the things which we explained today are coming from this thing only, right? So whichever property you want to know more, right, you just come here, read about that property, and it will give you more details, right? So for example, this web driver thing, I want to know more about the web driver. I just go here and I say this one, and it will navigate me to this thing which is called the web driver protocol. Okay, so all you have to do is just right click and click on help. Okay, as you can see, this is a single activity and this is the base for doing all the automation, right? So as a developer, I need to know what this thing is, right? And how do you configure all these properties, right? And I hope now you at least have an idea that how this thing work. Okay, let's quickly recap. Today we have seen that we have something which is called UI automation. We have two options available. One is classic, one is the modern. There are several approaches to automate a user interface, but if I'm using modern activities, we have to use application / browser activity, right? It can be used to automate the browser or any of the application installed on the computer, right? It opens the desktop application or the web browser for doing the UI automation. And then we have a lot of properties which can be customized as per our requirement. Okay, so this was a quick recap, guys. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to write me in the comments, or you can always drop me an email as well, right? In the upcoming videos of this playlist, we would be looking more into this modern experience and we would try to understand it, right? With this, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.